Of the King George Board of Supervisors to order. I just remind everybody we have mics. Please use them so folks in the audience can hear. This is a work session and there will be no public comment period.
And I'd also like to call the King George School Board work session to order as well.
So our first order of business is really more of seeking to understand kind of session here is for the 14-15 budget and any future plans the school board may have. As we all know, this year was very interesting since we didn't get a state budget until the very end. So we adopted a budget and then based on what happened in the General Assembly, it necessitated changes on especially on the schools. So rather than holding anything up, the Board of Supervisors appropriated a quarter of your budget, so there would be no impact. But your budget impacts, the proposed budget that you put forward impacts our budget. So we want to understand where you are, what you had to do, what the potential impacts were, and how you made everything work, given the fact that you had a fairly significant cut. So I think that sets the tone, and it's really seeking to understand.
Yeah, so you're right, and I think one of the anomalies we had this year was the fact that we didn't get the budget till it was so late. So that kind of, I think, precipitated a lot of events that we were able to go back and look at. One was our final ADM numbers that we got. We were able to take a look at that, and two was also to take a look at the number of retirees that we had, because we made a goal to, if we have someone retiring, we're going to try and set a cap of was it step 10, 9, probably 10 to step 10, nothing higher than that. So we knew there was some numbers we could use to that to adjust for the budget, so that we could try to keep some of the numbers the same that we had. Some of the other things we did was there were some teaching positions that we did not fill, and there was some other personnel costs that we made some adjustments to as well. Mr. Benson, if you want to elaborate on some of that.
Sure. I'll add to what Mr. Rose said if I can.
Please.
Just to give you a little context, what happened to us, to make sure we all understand, what happened to the schools is that at the 11th hour, the way I understand it, the methodology for the K-3 class size reduction incentive fund was changed. They were using just the prior year number to determine which schools qualified for the extra funding. It came back and they went back to using a 3-year average instead of just the prior year. And when that occurred, it knocked 2 of our elementary schools out of eligibility. So the loss then for us in King George was $316,000 or so. So what we had counted on in terms of state money from January all the way up until June 30th or the end of June, suddenly then that was reduced by 300. So coming back to the school board then, and I don't want to go too far, but
go ahead.
They had I let them know of this unfortunate reduction that we were going to have to account for in the budget. Laid out a couple of different options, and long story short, there were 5. I think I laid out 4 of them. Long story short, the school board unanimously asked me to go back and pursue option 1 that I had laid out for them. Option 1 was to keep the 2% COLA they had budgeted originally for employees, and to determine was there a way we could cut elsewhere within what had already been, I'll use earmarked for lack of a better term, from the Board of Supervisors. So we did. We went back. To do that, then I let them know that we had to collapse 2 positions, as Mr. Rose stated. One was a speech communication specialist, and the other was a parapro position. So we collapsed those positions. That was $60,000. I calculated for them we call it breakage. And breakage, basically the difference between the budgeted cost for personnel that we established at the time we build the budget, which is early in the spring. We have to assume everybody's coming back. We don't know who's leaving. The difference between that and then when we know better who has retired, who has left, and what the difference is between the budgeted salaries and benefits and the actual salaries and benefits we'll end up paying. So that was calculated. We went line by line, employee by employee, to determine where did we stand with actual breakage we knew for next year would be realized. And at that time, we had about 230,000 in breakage. The school board elected to then actually budget 176,000 of that. So a conservative, they knew that was breakage, they elected to use that amount of money, and then they revisited our ADM projection, as you know, from 4170, where where it was last left with the Board of Supervisors, to 4189. So that kind of outlines the strategy in
Yep.
terms of finding the funding without coming back to the Board of Supervisors to say, hey, they cut us 300,000. That wasn't in play when you were having your discussion, when you were determining the earmark, but we didn't want to come back to you and ask for additional money. Let's try to find a way in our own sandbox to make this work. And that's what we chose, that's what we pursued, and that's the plan.
So basically collapsing the two teachers and then the breakage and your ADM adjustment, so no programmatic cuts.
No.
No, sir.
And see, and like I said, this was an anomaly because we want to try and wait to set up our budget as late as possible.
Right.
Just so we can take some of these things into consideration.
Oh, no, understand. No, and
And that's what we wanted to try and do, is keep as much,
I think we all understand this happened at the
oh, yeah.
11th hour and 59 minutes.
Right.
So,
And we wanted to try to do as much to keep the budget as we have had as possible. So, because that's the budget we thought we needed to go forward with.
and I just for total transparency and clarity, the 2% it caused some concern for us because we look at King George County as a unified team, and we told you all we're doing 1%, and so when there's a difference, it creates issues for everybody, because why are some who are funded by taxpayer dollars getting more than others? And so that's the crux of it. It's not that we don't think anybody deserves any more, or there's some ulterior motive to cap people. It's what we could do within the county resources to do that. So I just want to make sure you understand where we're coming from by asking the question. Because we need to understand that, because we've got to be able to communicate to our employees, our staff, the same kind of thing when we get hit. How come?
Well, we felt very strongly we needed to have that 2% raise in there. One of the things we have to do is we have to go around the state and outside of the state to recruit teachers to come here. And then when they come here, they can look, I got a list here, we're the lowest in the region. Caroline's paying more than us, Colonial Beach is paying more than us. They can just look right next door and leave the next year and get more pay than they are right now. So we have to compete with the region. We have to find a way to compete with the region. And one of the things we put in our comprehensive plan was as a goal, was to try to raise the salaries of our teachers and staff to make them more competitive with the region. And that's one of the decisions we had to make.
You say Colonial Beach is making more than King?
Yep, Colonial
Well,
Beach starting salary is $39,973. Our starting salary is $37,087. And we just checked that.
Yes, sir.
You just checked that earlier today?
We called.
We called and confirmed that earlier
That's
today.
with the increase that we just,
Westmoreland,
That's a salary.
so that's clear.
so Fredericksburg, Spotsy, Colonial Beach, Caroline, and Stafford are all paying their starting salaries are higher than ours.
And just for clarification, if you go through the whole salary structure, there's places we're ahead, places others are ahead. It's not that we're below in every case. So just so everybody understands
Right,
that.
but the thing is.
And I'm not saying I'm not saying where we want to be. I'm just saying just to keep everything on a level. Right. Yeah.
Right,
I understand.
but we're recruiting
I'm not quarreling with you. I'm just
Right.
making sure everybody
But
understands.
we're recruiting new teachers right out of college, and like I said, they come here and they can just, next year they can go next door.
How do we compare the 10-year low?
To be honest with you, from 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30, we're below all six. We're the lowest in the 6 counties.
I have a chart.
So there is no going back and forth. It's straight down the line. We're less than all of these.
Okay, well, that's a change since the last time we got
That
data.
does not match what we.
Because other counties have been increasing their salaries and we haven't.
I'll pull these charts. We have a chart that we've
Okay.
compiled and we try to maintain from year to year. So this is the latest update.
Good.
We did call Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania, Colonial Beach, Caroline, and Stafford today to confirm that these
Good.
numbers were correct. And we've
I mean,
tried
that's
to-
information we need to understand, right? I mean, I think,
You might, when we get these around the table, we had to be very careful because some folks start on step 0, some start on step 1. So when you look at 5, that may be a 1-year difference. And we've tried to put it so you're comparing apples to apples. So where you see 15 and then you'll see 14 in Fredericksburg, they're the same number of years. It's just one started with 0 and one started with 1.
For everybody?
Got,
Yeah, everybody have one?
one more here
One more?
for us, yeah.
Yeah, could you pass that? Sure.
No, because we don't, our board members don't have all of them.
The board members don't either.
And give one to Ruby.
Ruby needs one, and they need one back here.
No, we,
Anybody have one? Ruby, do you have one?
I do, thank you. Share with me. Mr. Davis.
And I think the point's well taken. Certainly, certainly understand the local issue that creates. Just wanted to compile this to try to highlight where we're trying to compete is it's just still a different game, that's all. And it's certainly not to try to get away from the county or anything. We just have to try to keep pace, that's all.
No, and again, we're trying to understand. This is really information for us that we need to understand. I mean, if we gotta move to someplace, then we need to understand that. So it's,
very clear.
yeah, I mean, it helps.
I mean, the school districts are our competition, not y'all, basically.
No, right, and this is valuable information
And this is different
than what we've had in the past.
Yeah. The starting salaries, have moved around a little bit here and there, and we've lagged or been equivalent, depending on what year you looked at it. But we typically kept up pretty well from the 10, 15, and the 10, 15, 20-year band. So lagging there is a change from what we've been presenting.
Now, question, I noticed King George step 1, what the salary is, but then some counties have 0 step. What does 0 step mean?
It's the entry-level step.
That's before.
That's, their step 1 in King George is the same as a beginning teacher in Fredericksburg, is that what this is?
Yeah.
They just don't give. They just use 0.
So we
start
start with step 1, we don't have a step 0, they start with step 0.
Japanese
And then they moved to 1.
So what he did was equalized it by doing that.
Yep.
Good information.
Yeah.
Just to give you a little reality check on, I related to one of you yesterday that I worked with one of the teachers this past year, and good teacher, and I said, why did you pick King George? And her response was, it was my only offer. And at the end of the year, she left because she got another offer, and she was a good teacher.
So Robin, where are we with,
There's work to do.
I have a spreadsheet here that shows the adopted budget, the amended budget, which includes option 1, the 25% appropriation that we did on June the 24th, and then the remaining amount, so I can pass those around.
and you feel comfortable with your new ADM? I mean, you had some concern when we raised it, and now you've raised it even more, so you're okay with that?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, that, we got those final ADM numbers late, because usually we have to set our budget in February, and we were able to get those final numbers. We were able to see that adjustment, so we think we're pretty comfortable with those ADM numbers right now, as they are. And we'll know for sure here in a couple weeks what it looks like. Now, total enrollment doesn't mean your ADM numbers.
Absolutely right.
I mean, no shows and all
No,
that stuff, but
understand.
you can kind of take a look at that number and get an idea of what it's going to be.
If it's gonna, be close to what you need.
Plus, we have a larger graduating class this year, and some of them are graduating in January. So we have to take that in consideration as well, because that affects our final ADM numbers.
Right, because that's in April, right?
May.
End of March.
End of March.
End of March, yes.
But they won't come back that second semester, and
So that affects your average, yeah?
that affects our average.
Yeah.
Anyone have any questions on the spreadsheet?
It's not any different than what we agreed to, is it?
No, sir?
No questions.
Any other questions from the board?
Question, Mr. Chairman, but I can understand when you're looking at this data, why you wanted to do the 2%.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
I mean, we don't have a choice.
We really
I
don't.
understand it, yeah.
I mean, that is a priority, and
I think-
probably will be for years to come.
Understand.
Well, I think if you have a plan that you can share with us early, so we can start, taking that into consideration, I mean, we need to understand that. And it'll help everybody, so you're not hit with a cold surprise, here's this big,
Yeah, no, right,
Yeah.
right.
so.
I mean, there was some rumble that there was a contentious nature to questions, but I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if it was not between us, but, I mean, you're 60% of our budget. Asking questions and understanding is something that I'll always want to do. I think the other members of our board will as well. So, I mean, explain it well
Sure.
to me.
Okay.
I think the more we understand,
What we can
the
add,
better it is for you all.
and more if we can add.
I mean, Mike asked me, you know, what the questions were back in July. I gave him all the questions that I had in July. So.
I think,
trying-
I think we answered them.
Yeah, no, yeah, but I mean,
Well,
just trying to be transparent.
Yeah,
and
sure.
not hiding anything, not playing a game.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of innuendo out here, you know, that, they're out to do something. Well, we're not out to do anything. We're out to understand and make sure that we make the county the best we can, given the resources and stuff we can do. And, you know, teachers are important, and when you have the data that is much different than what we saw 2 years ago. So I think this is very, very helpful. And I'd really like to see your slope plan, how you plan to get to where you're going and what, you know, what it means.
Sure.
And are you gonna target it so you hit the ones you really need to?
Unfortunately, we've been talking about that, and that is way, it's very, very costly to do something like, to get everything more in line with the other areas, but.
It is.
well, we can get-
That's what I say, your plan's gonna have to probably target, we're gonna go after new hires or whatever.
That's what we've been doing.
Piece
That's
at
the
a
problem.
time.
That's what we've been doing.
No, but I'm saying, that may be where you have to apply your ramp up to
Your big increase.
recruit your,
And we have to work
if
that
that's where your
out.
hiring is at.
Or it could be at 5
Once,
years. or
once you
10
increase
years
the
or
first step, the
15.
rest of them will fall in.
Yeah.
They're all gonna increase. so
Yeah,
that's-
salary creep
yeah,
is
that's
an
a lot
issue
of
when you
money.
do that, yeah.
Yeah.
Cause we
So-
looked at making it 2% between steps, and that's outrageous.
Yeah, it was a lot.
I mentioned one thing,
Yes, sir.
because it keeps me up at night, and I want to make sure everybody knows that not next year, but the year following, there's another 2.9%, that VRS.
Right.
Payment is coming, and
Yep.
it concerns me, because that's,
Well, the other thing that concerns me is the state of the Virginia budget. We know right now that based on the projections, unless some miracle happens, next year's budget is gonna be worse than this year.
Yeah.
So, you know, we ought to be.
We'll have to just wait and see what happens when they come back with what our budget numbers are, what our control numbers are.
I would be looking for efficiencies, things that you can do different that save money. Looking for things that we've talked about a long time and we've never gotten traction on. What are the things that we can combine services on, and get a savings? And yes, it's gonna mean that some staff's gonna be reduced someplace. That's the idea behind the getting the savings, but it frees up money for the teacher piece of the equation. That's gonna be hard.
Yeah, I think the only way, in order for that to get more traction, is maybe for me and you and Mr. Benson and Mr. Kuzenberry to kind of sit down and
Be happy to.
hash some of this stuff out, so we can figure it
I
out.
think we should do that.
So
Let's-
we
let's-
really, I think we need to commit ourselves to do that.
Travis, let's take an action to make that happen.
Okay. So is that
You-
okay with any other questions for that budget?
Before, budget done, but so now looking forward, what are your big issues that you're facing, whether it be, you know, technology, facilities,
Yes,
staff?
and yes, and
Yeah,
yes.
No,
I'm just joking. but
What
you're
are
right.
Put some priorities.
what are they and what are the priorities looking forward from a plan standpoint? The difficult problem is to get surprised each year, it doesn't help anybody.
Yeah.
And so if we all know where we're going and what's the big thing, and it doesn't change year to year, right?
The bubble from the elementary school is gonna burst soon.
Yeah.
And we're working on that study. I think we're trying to get that study done to have the look at what we can do, either move this, either add on to the existing middle school or use the other building somehow. Once we get that study, then we know what would be the right recommendation to go forward with that. So we're trying to get, once we get that study, we really can't do anything until we get that study completed. I think that's in progress, or do you know where that's at, Travis?
Yes, we've developed a draft RFP, and I think Rob will be sharing that with the school board to get your input.
Okay, good. So once we get that RFP out and get the responses back, we can have an idea, and then we can come back together and figure out what to do about that.
And when you say bubble, am I missing something? Are you talking about the gym where it's leaking?
No,
No.
no, no.
No, I'm talking the increase in students.
So you know, you've been to King George Elementary School. You know how many children are there, and there's a lot. So
So they move into the middle school.
Okay, and I'll take the pressure off.
Well, no, it's gonna put a lot of pressure on the middle school. And
Well-
it's not, it doesn't have the
Well, what we want to
capacity.
do is take the sixth
Capacity.
graders out of elementary school and put them back into the middle school to free up more space in the elementary school, so we don't have to build another elementary school.
Right.
So then
That's
we
what
talked
we're trying
about
to do.
possibility of expanding the plant there at the middle school, putting and that's part of the study option. So we'll be
Right.
putting
A wing.
wing
Classrooms.
on a new wing there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We talked about it one time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we're working on now, trying to get that study in place, so we can get that done, so we can have that to add into the CIP.
About 3 months out, we'll have that, 4 months
Yeah.
out, something like that.
You mean having this,
Roof in the gym,
Study.
account with that.
Probably be longer.
having
than
the
that.
study
Roof in the gym is
completed?
leaking.
No, it'd
Which
be longer than
gym?
that.
Be longer.
King George Elementary.
Solicitation will take a couple of months
Hold on.
to evaluation.
Where,
Was not leaking no more?
Takes a
do
long
we
time.
fix the leak in the gym?
Middle school's still leaking.
Elementary school? King George Elementary School?
King George Elementary.
We have. We've addressed those seams up the top of that one.
Yeah, so it's okay. So yeah, it's facilities, it's teachers, it's trying to keep the technology up to date. You know how important technology is for our students to be able to know how to use the latest computers and laptops and iPads and all that kind of stuff. So we're trying to upgrade all those things and keep those up to date. Those are some of the things that are in our CIP. I think you guys are gonna look at later on today, right? So it's important to keep our children technology savvy, and so they can compete with other people in the outside world. So
I
that's,
bought a dishwasher, but told me that's straight and I ain't heard one.
we took care of that.
Purchase both those.
2 dishwashers.
So that's really, that's really what it is.
Okay.
And we'd be open for a joint meeting in the December timeframe to just sit down again and see, okay, you're getting ready to go to budget, you've got some ideas of what your classes look like and everything, and I think have another discussion.
That'd be great. Hopefully by then we'll know some more of this mess we're gonna have to deal with in
Well,
December.
and I think we'll have some idea of what we may be looking at with the General Assembly starting up, and if there's.
That's what I meant by say the mess, is the
So-
General Assembly.
So, well, I mean, with the General Assembly, if there's issues we have that need to be addressed by them, we can join forces and make sure we have a unified voice.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're not talking the same, we do ourselves a disservice. So we ought to hash that out and come up with the plan, and so we can then have a meeting with our delegation, which we typically do, and say, here's the top 5 that we have.
You can do that jointly.
Yeah, and we could do it jointly.
That'd be great.
So I think that's, I mean, I personally want to tell you that working with your school board has been the best experience that I have had in my 19 years. And I don't want to see that go anywhere but more positive. And so the openness and the ability to talk and discuss without getting personal, without getting emotional is important. So we can all plan for where we need to go. That's the biggest thing. If we can plan for it, we can make it happen. If it comes in like a grenade, it does what a grenade does, blows things up and makes a mess.
And that's one of the things I've been, and you all know that, I've been trying to work with everybody
Yep.
here. I've been eating breakfast and lunch and
Yep.
went to some people's houses and try to establish a relationship
Yep.
with all of you all. I haven't talked to you, I need to set some time to talk to you, but I've been trying to do the best I can to,
No, I
Just
think
keep
everybody's
relationship
working
and
together and
communication
just
lines open.
keep it open. If there's a question, if we need to sit down and talk, just let us know. We'll do it.
okay,
We'll do it. you got something that all of a sudden pops up and we need to talk about, we can make it happen.
All right. We done?
Motion to adjourn.
We moved, probably seconded, that the school board adjourns. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you, board members.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Yes, maybe.
Tell him stay. Tell him to stay.
So Robin, can you make sure this comes back at our next meeting for adoption? This is good. Yeah. I've never seen that.
How are you?
All right, Travis, CIP.
Yes, sir. What I'm passing out now is a copy of the 5-year CIP. This is a list that the various departments have developed. The color coding is, you look at the bottom table, it shows the rankings from the Planning Commission. And the yellow are the projects that the Planning Commission, after their public hearing, ranked as urgent. And the, I guess the orange color or peach color is the projects that they ranked necessary. So what I think we were going to do is, starting with Parks and Recreation, just have each department give an overview of their projects, the total 5-year projects, and then discuss the projects that they would like to do this fiscal year, starting with Tim.
Thank you for allowing us to speak.
Sorry about that. Thank you for having us. The first project is Shiloh Park Phase 2, and that consists of a 30 by 60 shelter, a restroom concession facility, and connecting to water and sewer. The next project is Barnesfield Park Phase 1. That's conducting a park master plan, installing a well for field irrigation, relocation of Field C, expanded centralized parking, and install a two-stall restroom, double vault restroom facility. The third project is the Quonset Hut improvements, which consist of a building study, just to make sure it's okay. Before.
Excuse me, what's Kwanzaa Hut?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the old King George Elementary gym. And
Oh,
it
thank
looks
you.
like a
Thank you.
barracks.
Yes, okay.
It's also replacing the HVAC units and roof repair.
On Charlotte Park, phase 2, how about the situation there now? What phase is that? Because the grass is terrible, it looks a mess down there.
They have been working on it. I'm not sure when the last time we were down, but they just recently cut, I think last week.
So the grass is growing out? Because it was dead, the time I was there, it was dead. Look at it.
Yeah, it's not taking off the way it should, and we're working with the contractor on that as we speak.
Bermuda grass and it should go pretty good.
Yeah, we're not sure what's going on with the multipurpose field because it's not taking the way it should have. It's got like a 30% growth instead of, right now it should be about 90%.
Maybe it's the type of soil it's there because it was landfill.
That's possible, but I think there's also, they added some peat moss and stuff like that to the soil to try to enrich it. There's not really an explanation at this point.
But it's being looked at.
It's being looked at. We're trying to figure out how we can get on and use the facility and try to correct it as we go on through the contractor.
Yes. So Quonset Hut,
Okay, so the next one was Hunter Field improvements. Initially, this project includes stabilizing the eroding embankment, installation of a well, or improving the water system, preparation of the field, and seeding and sprigging with Bermuda. The next project is Barnesfield Park Phase 2, and that's lighting 3 ball fields. Next project is practice lights. They would be installed at the middle school, Barnesfield Park, and Ralph Bunch. And also at the middle school, we would try to install a light control system that we have control on. And then project 7 is the Citizen Center expansion. This project would consist of expanding the office/storage area by 600 square feet, remodeling the restrooms that would accommodate 2 additional stalls for each the men's and women's restrooms, and add additional parking on the west side of the center, which is where the volleyball courts are. So we would take the volleyball courts out and move those to the parks.
Okay. Any questions for Tim? Because I think what we're going to do is we're just going to go through all of these.
We've got these in detail somewhere in a book.
They're in your
Yeah, yeah,
CIP.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, all the different projects are here.
Did you want a priority? Did you want
Yes, and what is your number one priority?
Yeah, of all the projects, I'm gonna say this with sincerity, that the Quonset hut improvements would be my number one. Right now, we have gymnastics, and we do about 70 rentals in there per year on weekends, and in the wintertime, it can get down as low as 54 degrees. In the summer, it gets as hot as 80, 88, I think. So it'd be nice to get those HVAC units in. The other part is the study itself, I think, is important before we really put a lot more money into this facility.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's no sense putting the money into it and then finding out it's not gonna last another five years.
Question on this Quonset hut thing, the old middle school gymnasium, are we using that at all now?
Yes, sir.
I would say the Quonset hut, rather than put a lot of money into that, look like it make more sense to put it into the,
Yeah, I would just say that middle school gym is smaller than the Quonset hut. And so for us, looking at that Quonset hut, even the way we've been looking at installing units that we can remove at a later date would be a great fix right at this point.
does that Quonset hut make good insulation?
It seems to be holding up fairly well. I'd be lying to you if I said there's no leaks in it from the standpoint of air getting through the doors or anything like that, but I think it's gonna be minimal.
Okay. All right, next, we have the King George County School projects, and Rob's gonna review his projects.
I don't mean to repeat, I know we met jointly and discussed these items, but I'll go ahead and summarize in similar fashion. You wanted the yellow and the orange primarily? Okay, the first is the school bus maintenance program, or continuing with the cycle of replacing the 4 most aged or highest mileage buses in our fleet, so we don't get caught having to replace multiple buses in a given year. We've been doing that for several years now. The second is the King George Middle School roof repair, and just to remind you, that was divided into 2 phases. We would tackle the eastern portion of the building first for approximately half the amount there, and then in a subsequent year, we would hope then to complete the project. And we had some letters, and we had a study done for that, so I won't go into too much detail there. The network equipment. This is, and in your detail packet, you'll see, this is really the switches. Mr. Rose talked about actual computers and that type of thing. I want to highlight that this is really, our switches are 11 years old in many cases. And as you know, as we all know, that's the backbone of the whole system. And if those things start to go, which we anticipate they will before too long, we're sunk. So that's why we've marked that as an urgent necessity to address that those aged switches in our buildings to keep our network up and going. The fiber expansion there, that's something we currently lease fiber to 2 of the schools. So that would be really a return on investment in not having to pay that yearly lease on the fiber we currently use. And then the high school track, we've talked about that here at a joint meeting. We have a study now that's been completed.
They have.
And you have that study. So you have the recommendations from Draper. Be happy to answer any questions or elaborate any further if you'd like.
Question, the high school track will take a precedence over school security? Would be a higher priority than school security?
No, sir, that's, the school security, I spoke with the school board, that, we've parked further out because we are waiting to see, we've applied for another grant.
Yeah.
At the state level, we're very hopeful we can receive another grant to secure the access systems at Sealston and King George Elementary. I should know within 30, 45 days. So that's why, Mr. Brooks, we moved it further away from 2014-15, giving us the time to see if we qualify for the grant money. And hopefully we do, and we can take it right on off the CIP.
These are planning commission, not his.
And the facility expansion you show here, that's pending the outcome options we're looking at, correct?
The study we just talked
That's for
about. That is correct. That's a placeholder there for the, whatever option we choose to pursue.
Got it.
Okay.
Yep, so what's your number one? I mean, taking the school buses, that's a given.
I don't want to put you in a hole there, yeah, I would say.
No, that's a given. That,
Yeah.
we moved that out of your operations because of
Got it.
Well, the
making some
roof
money
repair,
available.
I think the roof repair is long overdue. If we don't address that, that's gonna cause us more issues underneath
No, right.
of that roof that would be even more expensive to
No, right,
to
absolutely.
fix.
It's unfortunate that that roof wasn't caught when we did all those major renovations. Any questions for Rob? Thanks.
All right, the next, under administration, we have 3 projects. None of them are proposed to be funded this fiscal year. We still have Ralph Bunch School on the list, the sports stadium turf replacement, and eventually we're going to start building that fund. In fact, when later in the meeting, when Robin hands out the fund balance, you'll see that we have a reservation in there for the sports turf. And the third project is a convenience center site in Dalvern. Waste management is required to build a convenience center once we find a site for it.
And the $72,000 that's there for Ralph Bunch, what do you plan to do with that?
That's the money, the board appropriated funding to do the stabilization work at Ralph Bunch, and that's the funds, we finished the stabilization work, that's the funds that's still remaining from that initial appropriation. Eventually, the building's gonna need a new roof, and that's what the $215,000 is there for, but we don't wanna do that until a decision's made as to what the use of the building is, because that building has the rooftop HVAC units, and you don't wanna go in there and put a new roof, then have to turn to the roof and put in new HVAC systems.
Or anything
Convenience center
else.
sites.
fiber.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The convenience center site's been an interesting discussion over time as well. I mean, we've had difficulty
That's right.
locating those, so.
And I know we're discussing a fire station site for the Dalgan area, and it might be possible that we could find enough land to do both in one location.
Okay.
All right, any questions on those projects? All right, next we have information technology. This is a continuation of both of these programs. It's our computer replacement program and our replacing the network servers. And that's $50,000 for each of those 2 projects. Okay. The sheriff's office has 1 project, that's a microwave radio replacement, and that's not proposed to be done until next year. So we'll be bringing that back to you for funding next fiscal year. Community Development had one project. You've already funded this, so this will be removed because this project is already on the way. That's the Public Safety Answering Point System. And the final is Emergency Services, and David and Valerie are here to discuss their projects.
Thanks for coming out tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We have 4 projects, with 2 being proposed to be funded this fiscal year. The first is the ambulance replacement program. As you know, we have 6 ambulances in our fleet. Currently, 4 out of 6 all have over 100,000 miles on them right now. This is, instead of getting in a position where we have to purchase 3 or 4 at a time, we can spread them out and request 1 each year.
This is what we've done with all our vehicles, sheriffs,
Right.
school buses,
Right.
and ambulances and fire trucks, so that's a given.
The second one is the replacement of the Company 2 Fire and Rescue Station in Dahlgren. I can elaborate on that project. Many of you have visited, you know, the exact locations. We have the old rescue squad, we have the fire station, and this would be a proposed combined facility. The third project is a replacement of engine 21, and that's in the at the Company 2 Dahlgren Station. That would have approximately over 20 years of use, and would start to meet its timetable that we need to look at putting that in a different capacity. The fourth project is adding a new fire and rescue facility in the county, possibly located in the Shiloh, Jersey area. This would add a 4th fire and rescue district to the county, and it would cut down, reduce some of the response times. Right now, Company 1 serves 113 of the 182 square miles in the county. So it's it would aid into reducing the response times, thus providing better service and saving lives.
I know the planning commission didn't give it any type of ranking. But you know, there's a lot of discussion about, do we need something in Shiloh? And I thought we could maybe work it together with Dahlgren, because the residents of Shiloh, we don't have anything. Dahlgren's already got the station there, they just need to improve what they got. But then some people say that we don't need anything in Shiloh now. That's not right, because you can't compare the 2 of them.
I think you gotta be careful, because 1 or 2 people speaking doesn't make it a requirement. I actually think that what the data that we got from Fire and Rescue shows us that's an area that needs to be fixed. We've got to do something there. We cannot continue with the traffic on 3 to get people down there. I think that's a higher priority, and that's my personal opinion.
No, I would agree with that.
And I know we've had some discussions about how to attack this, and so we're looking at what other options there are. But ultimately, you know, both of them are required. But if you had to go and say, well, what gives you the biggest bang for the buck in a life-saving standpoint, you're talking Shiloh first. I don't think that's even debatable.
Well, I would say, other than the largest population, Monday through Friday during the work hours is in Dahlgren. So somebody coming from Shiloh to serve, you have the issues of the fire rescue trying to get out because of the base traffic on Route 206. Again, it's just my opinion.
Sure, no, absolutely.
Well, I think what we've talked about is with the capital plan that we're being able to work, and some of the capital economic development that we're doing, the possibility of working those projects simultaneously. Let's try to see what the costs end up being, but there's an opportunity to save some costs as we do simultaneous design and apply that to just to the topography of the and geography of these locations. We haven't identified a Dahlgren location yet. We have a potential Shiloh location that we already own, so there's no capital outlay to start that one or negotiations associated with it either. So I know we're working that on the Dahlgren site for Company 2. I think both are, as our fire and rescue liaison, I know both of them are very important.
Yeah, and
for different reasons. And I think we don't have any ability to provide service at at a Shiloh site today, so certainly looking to have that and adjust those range rings accordingly and our response times, because really that's what we're all about. It's about providing the service, first and foremost, and
Are you finished? I don't want to interrupt. So I would just ask, maybe it would be prudent for us to do a comparison, where are the calls before we determine what is the actual priority. If majority of the calls would have been responded from a new company 2 station versus having a station in Shiloh, it doesn't make sense to put one in Shiloh if you're still not able to respond to the calls because the majority of the calls aren't coming out of that Shiloh area where it would be located.
You know, one of the real advantages of Dahlgren already is the Navy. They have response from the Navy. So you've got, not only do you have King George there, you have the Navy.
But the Navy is
Respond.
only basic life support, not
Understand.
advanced life support.
I understand, but it's there.
And they
Shiloh
still have
has
the issue
zero.
of the traffic on the base.
Shiloh has nothing.
I understand, but if the
Zero.
bulk of the calls are not coming from that area and Monday through
We're not making
Friday,
that decision
I
today.
understand, but I'm just stating,
And-
doesn't
and-
make sense to spend money if the calls aren't there.
well, the calls are there because we're running 118 square miles, 183 from Company 1.
Right.
And that includes all parts of the county. So we're running from Westmoreland County line to Stafford line from Company 1.
They're also
So-
responding to Dahlgren.
Sure they
Company
are.
1 is
Right.
responding,
So
but
I
that's
don't
my
underst-
point.
So I understand the contention, really, because I think we've identified a need in both locations. Protecting one district is great. That large district is the whole county. That's mine, and as our fire and rescue liaison, I've been in all of our facilities. I spent a lot of time with our fire and rescue folks. They're both needed, without a doubt. It's interesting that some of our closed session discussions resulted in some of the churn out here, but I don't think any of this board's debated or negated the need at both places. So some of this churn has really been artificially generated. So I think we're all committed that they're both needed. And when you look at the range rings, which are fact, we do have coverage maps that show a huge gap in the Shiloh area. We want to address that. We believe we have inferior facilities in the Dahlgren district. We want to address that. Why that's contentious is beyond me. I think we all agree to that. So I think with the capital outlay that we're working, we'll find a smart way to do both of these projects that get us to where we need to be in fairly short order. So I think we need to be focused on that instead of trying to pit people and giving briefings and trying to create churn and angst and arguments about it when everybody agrees they're both needed. So I think that's where it stands.
I don't think Chief Black coming to a town hall meeting and providing information to the citizens is creating churn. I think that's him sharing information that is public information, and I applaud him for doing so.
I didn't mention Chief Black, you did.
Sure, I mean,
Yeah.
you're the one saying that
I'm
because
saying our
people are
closed
putting
session
information out
discussions-
there that there
yeah.
must be, an issue, and there's not an issue with providing information to the public. The public is owed that information. It's public information. They have a right to know what the status is of the Company 2 station that serves them in the Dahlgren
Yep.
district. That being said, the only caveat I would add is fire rescue personnel, they are the experts. And if they say Company 2 is the #1 priority, then I take them at their word because they are the ones that do this day in and day out. They understand that job way better than I ever will.
I don't remember a priority
I don't
being
either.
provided.
I don't either. When was that done?
And when did we have not received a prioritization.
When did we do that?
All I did was say, if they say it's priority,
They?
then that's what I support.
They.
Fire rescue.
The chief. The chief.
Okay. The chief said that. All right. Okay.
Thanks. It's important.
Okay.
All right, so Travis.
Yes.
You've had this for a while, and
Well, the next thing before we get to the capital projects budget, I want to hand out the fund balance. I think it's important for the board each year to see where we are on the fund balance sheet. So I'll ask Robin to brief you on this.
How much we got to spend?
I think we have $1 million, we got 10.
Yeah. Oh, man.
You probably don't want to see this one.
And I do apologize, I made a mistake on there across the. It happens.
It's okay.
It's a word though, not a number.
You have one for
You've seen this before in the past. We try to hand it out around budget and CIP. It basically shows the audited fund balance from the prior year, and then any reservations or items that have been, taken, agree to take out of the fund balance. Just note these numbers are still unaudited. Our audit's being worked on in the next few weeks, so they should be audited here shortly. And you can see in the general fund, the reservations that were taken out, and in the capital fund, the reservations that were taken out, including what we have to take out per policy that's reserved. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, on it.
So as we look at CIP, we're looking at about $1 million in the total fund available.
If we decide to use that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I mean, that's key. And we want to hear your
Okay.
inputs.
Okay, what I'm handing out now is a draft. This is a draft of the current year FY14-15 capital project budget. You've heard from each department regarding their projects. All the projects are important, but we can't do them all now. So I'll go over this list, and I'll go over the projects and how I'm proposing that we pay for these. In Parks and Recreation, you heard Tim say that the most important project was the Quonset hut improvements, the assessment. So I've included $30,000 for the assessment of that building using recreational activity funds.
Really?
We have some funds remaining in the recreational activity fund, so we're going to start using some of them. Under King George County Schools, I included 4 buses. I checked with Ray Newton last week to get the current prices of the largest bus. And I'm not sure they need 4 large ones, but that's what I've included here. So this allows them to get 4 large buses. I've included funding for the half of the middle school roof repair. And I've included partial funding for the network switches. I think that's something that we can phase in over time. Do the most critical ones first and work to phase those switches in. The way we would pay for that, we have $15,900 remaining in prior year's funding that was remaining from the school bus purchases. We have a little over $90,000 remaining in prior year funds for roof repairs. I'm proposing to use $99,642 in the current year operating budget from the capital portion that's being transferred from the landfill revenue, and $196,459 from reappropriation of funds, and I'll go over that later, for the buses, and plus $504,490 in capital projects fund reappropriation for the middle school roof repair, and $125,000 of that reappropriation for the network switches. In IT, I'm proposing to do both the servers and the computer replacements, $50,000 each, using the FY14-15 operating budget. Same with the 7 new vehicles for the sheriff, taking them out of the operating budget. Under emergency services, I'm including the ambulance, $51,000 remaining in prior year funds, and $134,000 in FY14 operating budget. And I'm just showing a fire station. And I'm showing $650,000, $150,000 in prior year funds, and $500,000 contingent on us receiving that funding this year from Waste Management going to the fire station. So the funding sources in total, in our operating budget for the current year, we have $531,642. That's what we approved in the budget. And the funding source shows how I'm using that funds. In prior year appropriations, that's money you've appropriated in the previous years, $307,385. In capital project fund reappropriation, $825,948. And what this is, these are capital projects we've been doing over the years where we've been able to do them for less than we appropriated. So we've been putting that money in the capital projects fund. This isn't all of that fund, but this is a significant portion of that fund. Then $30,000 from the recreational activity fund for the Quonset hut assessment, and then $500,000, once we receive that, pending DEQ approval of the vertical expansion from Waste Management, for a total of $2,194,975.
That's pretty good, actually. Everybody got their,
The only one the only one that's really in a kind of iffy state is the fire station, based on when the DEQ approval on the permit.
That's correct. In fact, at the next board meeting, we would, if you like this list, we would bring you an appropriation resolution, but it would not include that $500,000.
Right. And that's okay. I mean, I think we still got work to do, but we do have a source. We actually have a source for 2.
That's correct.
It's just phased. So I think that actually helps a lot.
it's good.
So anybody, and I'm open up to people from their departments, schools, any questions, issues with the list that Travis has?
Excellent.
The only thing I would be concerned about, respectfully, is if we're gonna go to this recreation activity fund,
I was gonna ask where that.
I would like to go ahead and see if we can't get the air conditioning in or HVAC units attached as well. Again, that's something we can remove at a later date if we.
Well, you can come back with that,
Okay.
okay? I think
I'd like to do the assessment first and make that part of the assessment, and then
Yes.
bring your plan that shows.
that's
what
where I
those
was
improvements
going.
would
Let's
be.
get this assessment, and then let's figure out what makes sense.
Right.
And if we have to make an adjustment mid-year.
That's right.
Or right after the report, we can do that. That money's there to
Plus,
go.
we may phase those improvements depending on what that cost will be.
Yes. I think that's a better plan. And we understand and appreciate the need for the HVAC.
Worry about those participants.
No, that's your job, and that's why I want to make sure you get a chance to put it in.
The recreational activity fund, that's park and rec money.
That is.
Well, set aside for what purpose? Whatever needed.
Basically whatever needed, yes, right, recreational programs.
And it's only $30,000 in that fund?
No, sir, it's a lot more than that. I'm just proposing to take that 30 out of that fund for this year.
When is the last time we used anything out of that fund?
It's been a while. It's basically, Parks and Rec has their own self-supporting fund. Basically, it's a recreation activity fund. It's outside of their administration that falls within the general fund. And each year, if there's additional money collected versus what was spent, it falls into their fund balance, and it's basically.
So if he's got needs, he needs in Parks and Rec, he needs to bring that to us and can use that fund.
Yes.
But that's fees from basketball, soccer, trips to
Sir.
New York, whatever, right? I mean, that's the positive fund balance at the end of the year aggregates into the recreation activity fund.
Yes, sir. And there's been, over the past few years, the Parks and Rec has done a great job of keeping expenditures down so that we can make sure that we don't go over, and we are able to make sure that.
Carry over. Good. It's good use of that.
Okay, so if there's no questions or issues, I'll have Travis and Robin bring this back to us at our next meeting for our consideration. Okay. All right, so next item will be discussion of the tourism fund.
6.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. In November of this year, or 2013, we hosted a quarterly breakfast, one of my economic development, tourism, and small business breakfasts. And the first one we had, we focused on tourism specifically. If you see on your second sheet, we put together a review for you all and presented it on July 8th. We received feedback from the entire community that showed up about some of the initiatives that they felt were important for tourism. You'll also see that currently we have an excess of $42,000 from FY14 remaining in reserve that have not been spent on tourism because there was a freeze on it until we could get you all's feedback on what we could use going forward. In FY15, there's approximately $79,000 budgeted for tourism, which totals $121,000. As you'll see on your first sheet, we have put together an itemized list per your request on July 8th. We put together an itemized list with estimated costs associated with these things. Again, they're estimated, and these are preliminaries. There is no order to these. We put them, well, there is an alphabetical order to these. That's about it. So we did put them in alphabetical order. The first thing we're asking tonight is to reach out to you all and ask for a consensus or suggestions about how we can spend this money moving forward. One of the things that we got from the July 8th meeting was it seemed to be that you all would support a tourism brochure, a tourism and destination brochure. So we did take the bull by the horns and try to put something together. This would obviously be a trifold. This would be the back. It would fold out like this to the back. Tim, do you have your Caroline County, the one from Caroline as an example?
Hey, Linwood, you said, you mean February 18th is when you met the work session with the board to get their input?
Excuse me, yes.
Not July 18th.
Please, thank you for clarifying that. There's a big difference. Thank you.
This is one for Caroline. Nice poster on the backside. There you go. I'm sorry about that.
And what we are doing, we handed these out because if this is something you all would think would benefit the community, the tourism community, and at large, the hoteliers, the restaurateurs, points of destination, we want to get your feedback, and you don't have to make these decisions tonight, but look over this. We may have left something out. You know, it's 10 sets of eyes are better than 4. So we ask that you look over this and see if it's something you do want to do, if we've left something out, because we want to make sure it's all inclusive. So with that, we want to turn it over to you for feedback and suggestions about these tourism initiatives moving forward.
I can write on this, right?
Sure, it's your copy. Mr. Chairman, I guess I've got a question about how we want to proceed, probably more so than the direction, because I think it comes down to what is our strategy or vision. And I've been wrestling with that a little bit as we talk about these tourism dollars. We really haven't talked about a position as a board of what we want to accomplish. And as we apply these resources, I think it's got to go in some direction. It can be a kind of a smattering of things that might result in nothing, or it could be concentrated towards some end goal. So we really haven't talked about any of those end goals. We're a population of about 24,500 or whatever the latest Weldon Cooper is. And, I'm not sure that any of us are trying to bring droves of people to King George County. I know I'm not. So if we're looking at targeting things that significantly impact our population, then, we've seen the challenges that some of that can provide. If we're talking about supporting our existing businesses and making for a healthy economic environment, that's a good thing. I think that's something that that I can support, that we can support. But I just would like to have that discussion about, what are we really trying to accomplish? We're not, I don't think we're targeting trying to build a King's Dominion equivalent, or we're not going to suddenly have historical sites show up that don't currently exist. I think we can highlight the things that are here. We've obviously got the Dahlgren Museum, some other things. But the thought of King George County becoming a tourism destination, to me, is an interesting thought, one that I don't, I'd want to know what that meant, because I'm not interested in attracting high volumes of folks. We see the challenges that brings. But if it's about supporting our existing businesses and strengthening economic development and Linwood's efforts, I can see going there. So if that makes sense, Mr. Chairman, if we could.
It does, because this is a hit or miss kind of approach that we've been on. It's not been significant dollars. It still isn't. And I'll get to the dollars in a little bit, but I do think we've looked and we see that the real some of the real drivers here are the Parks and Rec initiatives with bringing in the tournaments, and that are probably the biggest draw that you have if you were looking at, and so if you use that just as it's debatable, pick something else if you don't like that. What do you do to make people comfortable and make them aware of where they can go get the things they need while they're here? Food, hotel, supplies, whatever. Really, that's at the end of the day, that's what we do, and try to get them focused towards the businesses in King George.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
if I may, the code's very specific about how these dollars are to be spent, and I guess I would say if we're not going to do so, then we really shouldn't be collecting the tax. But if you look halfway down in Section A, it says any excess over 2% shall be designated and spent solely for tourism and travel, marketing of tourism or initiatives that, as determined after consultation with the tourism industry organizations, including representatives of lodging properties located in the county, attract travelers to the locality, increase occupancy at lodging properties, and generate tourism revenue in the locality. So if we're not interested in seeking the input of those organizations and the representatives of the lodging properties, and if we're not interested in seeing an increase in the occupancy, and we're not interested in actually marketing our locality to attract travelers, then we really shouldn't be collecting the tax.
I don't know that we said that.
I do think the attempt was in our first quarterly breakfast to bring
address that,
everyone to the table, to try to get as many people as we could out.
I think you did that.
To receive.
I think you met that requirement.
Yeah.
I think we met that requirement.
I'm just simply stating that the code is very specific.
Yeah, and what we found out, like I said, is these tournaments and stuff that Tim brings in are big draws, and they're weekend events, and they generate room nights for our hotels. So I think that is totally in line with the tourism fund that we could use.
I didn't say it wasn't.
Well, you made it sound like it wasn't.
Mr. Sisson was commenting that he wasn't looking to bring in droves of people.
Yeah, I stand by that.
Tournaments bring in droves of people. I mean, let's be real.
Oh, I don't
It
see
may
it
only
as,
be
well,
a
so
few
droves
days,
is a relative
but
term, and so I don't see those kind of, that's not droves. Droves is
if I
thousands upon
misunderstood
thousands
you,
of people.
I apologize, but
So
you did say.
what I did clearly state was that if a strategy that says that we're going to support our existing businesses and economic development in line with the plan that we have Linwood working, then that makes sense to me. So that was really the gist of my statement. But I did say that I'm not interested in significantly changing the population of King George County through tourism. I'm not. So, I mean, I've never seen anything with the events that are going on with any of our ball tournaments or anything like that has done that. We have seen some things like Aquapalooza that created some serious challenges, and that's what I would call droves. Created serious challenges and costs for us and changed the demographics of our county to a point where it was not beneficial. So I would use that as an example of something that doesn't work. I would use it. So just make sure, so I would concur that droves is a very arbitrary term. But so if you want to see what I mean from a relationship standpoint, Aquapalooza, that brought droves, that brought a lot of problems. We can have a very successful Little League tournament in this county and do some really good things.
And we did confer with legal counsel to make sure that all these things on the list, and we could have left something out. Let me make clear, there could be something that you all determine that if best fits the need, but we did consult with our legal counsel, Eric, to make sure. Eric, he's there.
I forgot you over there.
Figured I'd bring him in.
I mean, when you look at it from a realistic standpoint, I know many times a lot of people in this area take trips to Strasburg, Pennsylvania, because they go there for a reason, for the big plays and stuff. Why would somebody in Baltimore or New York say, hey, we're getting a bus to go to King George? What are they gonna do when they get here?
Caledon attracts 90,000 visitors a year. Most of them come from overseas because they
Okay,
want to see the
overseas.
Eagles. But you asked what makes them come.
I said Baltimore, that area.
Caledon Wine Festival,
So people are coming from Baltimore down here?
absolutely.
I'm just saying realistically, it's not a whole bunch of stuff in King George that somebody would get on a bus and come to, but you're saying Caledon, that's one single thing.
John Wilkes Booth tour comes and stops at the Dahlgren Marina and stops at the Claydell House and stops at Belle Grove.
Claydale House.
Yeah, the one in Claydell
It's just a
where,
house, I mean, it's nothing, they don't, there's nothing to offer in there.
just Dahlgren Marina too, but because John Wilkes Booth stopped at those locations, that's why they go.
But again, it's not like a Strasburg.
I'm just telling you what people come to see, that's all.
I'm just trying to be realistic. I hear what you're saying, but
I think your point is right on, Mr. Brooks. I agree with you, and I don't disagree that they come to see other things, but not on the level of what people would normally think about as tourism. But I also think your idea of not even collecting the tax is something that should be on the table as well.
You all may get home and also notice that the total here is over $220,000 when we only have approximately 121.
Well, I was gonna get to that point. You don't have 121, you have projected that you're gonna get 79K, and I think it would be a bad practice to be spending all of that on the hopes that you generate that.
Sure.
I think you need to be very conservative, and really it ought to roll, you ought to do it in reverse. Whatever you have from 14, you spend in 15, 15 you spend in 16. I think it's a much safer approach.
We just wanted to show you all that was there.
Sure. No problem, I appreciate that. And we all know that we've tried things that don't work.
Correct. Correct.
We have. And so there's no harm in trying and recognizing it just doesn't work here. And I think we've made those findings on a couple of these.
Did you want any comments about any of the things he has
Sure.
on his list?
Yeah.
Well, Bluemont Concert Series I would not support based upon the attendance that we had when I did advocate for it. As I expressed to you previously, the Artisan Trail still has not been finalized with the Northern Neck Tourism Council because we feel the vendors themselves should also have a vested interest in it. So if you did want to set aside, just in case, I would recommend that you only set aside half that amount and anticipate you probably wouldn't even need all of that. As for your map, I think it's a great idea. I like the concept of it. I guess I would just like for you to take it to the King George Chamber and get their thoughts as to whether or not they would like to see the money spent on this. If they felt it was beneficial, then I would support it. I guess I would just want to know from them if they felt it was a wise investment for us. Portable canopy, portable microphone system, I see the benefits there, wide-ranging, being able to be utilized for numerous purposes and events. I can see that a definite worthwhile benefit. And question would be, what do you mean by updated signage improvements? Is there something specific that you have in mind?
Yes, that was the entryways to King George, 301 and Route 3 at each end.
Yeah.
Having a nice put up a nicer sign.
Well, they're tired.
Oh,
They're tired.
Good idea. That is really a good
Be at the
idea.
county line, because you know, a lot of the counties, like Caroline,
Yep.
staff, they've got real nice signs.
Right.
And we're the only ones that still got the sort of drab-looking signs.
Ours was the first that was pretty good when we did put them up, so I mean, I think,
Hey.
but it's time. It's
You know,
time.
an idea for that might be something like one of the art classes at the high school, to have a little contest to see if they can design. I mean, I think we should totally get rid of that one and design something with the seal or whatever. But a little contest at one of the art classes or in the school might generate some interest. Just a suggestion.
And then I've already stated that I support the farmer's market position part-time. There's always benefits to having dedicated staff and a grant writer. Don't know at this point how I feel about that, but I do understand the benefits to that. And I guess that's the only comments at this point.
Now, how would the part-time farmers market position fall under tourism?
Because
I
the
know people
farmers,
people come to the farmers market from all over the place, so you can consider that tourism?
it does, yes.
Yeah, I'm not interested in funding positions. I think that's a slippery slope, and you don't want to do that. If you want to fund something, that's fine. But when you start funding positions, I think you get into trouble.
Yeah, personally, I like the tangible things that have a lifespan. You know, when you're making renovations to fields and things like that, that's something that our citizens here can use as well as folks that would come in. So that's more of a far-reaching, longer-lasting kind of investment in my mind.
And we do see that as one of the major draws. I do support the ball field improvements myself. We also, we have joined the Northern Neck Tourism Commission.
Right, and we do
So-
pay that through these
So
funds.
we should have that there as well.
Right.
I mean, that's a given.
So, I mean, Mr. Chairman, a suggestion might be to have, now that
Yeah.
I don't know if we've come to any kind of consensus, but we've beat some ideas around the table. Maybe we ask Linwood to go back, he's given us an alphabetized list,
Yeah.
to come back with a proposed budget for that. I don't know if that's fair or not.
Well, I'd like to have them do two things. You've heard the discussion, and this will be a test for our new economic development guy to figure out. But
Always enjoy it.
Might be a tough one.
to put together what our tourism mission statement is, or vision statement, based on what you heard here, that we're not looking to be King's Dominion or Strasbourg, but at the same time, we want people who come to visit the county to use our businesses and stay in the hotels here for overnight visits. So you can try to craft something.
I know you missed the drive workshop that we had, but if you get those materials from Lisa Hall, it helps you create that mission and vision statement. Okay.
That'll be a good, so that gives a framework, and then we're working from something that's defined, and we can share with the public and get their feedback.
So that was the first, and there was two, and then you want me to put a prioritized list together? Is that what was, or just the
Well, that
first
was,
come back
I
with?
mean,
a
that was an
mission?
idea that I tossed out. I don't know how everyone else feels about that, but,
I think
But
we
you
got,
need
you know,
step eight.
we've got some time, so let's try to solidify a mission and vision.
I can support that.
And then we can start working through, we've got a couple things here we know we're gonna do, like the Tourism Commission. And then we need to think about this farmer's market, how we're gonna do that, what it means. I really think it becomes more like an outside agency that gets funded with tourism dollars, and not, it's a grant. It's a grant, and they use it for what they need, because this whole idea of a position has inflation built into it then. And I don't think you want to go there.
So if I can clarify, you're just trying to make sure it doesn't come across as an employee of the county.
Right.
Okay, and I can support that. I can
They
support
can,
that.
they can use the funds, you know, how they see fit. But I think going along with you, and the other thing I'd like to see them do is, like you have the vendors along the Artisan Trail being required to put up some, I think that we ought to see where the farmer's market's gonna also match that for that position, if that's the case, to see how it gets worked. They've got vendors and as well, so.
So that's the total price of the part-time market,
No, that's
No,
person,
that's the total price.
really,
$1,000.
Yeah, that's the total
okay,
price.
so we can see where they come up, because they've got folks there that are benefiting from it.
Maybe they give
Directly.
2,000 and we give 2,000 or something.
Yeah, something like that. So we can start fleshing that out. But Linwood could work some of that through. But anyways, let's start with the vision, mission.
You can cross off the Bluemont.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes.
I don't think anybody.
Yeah, we've
Tried that
questioned
so
that
many
one for
times.
years, yeah.
Well, they've changed. They've evolved, right? And they've
Definitely
become a
have changed.
different. So it's all part of the evolution.
Sure. Better venues.
Home show, I think, is a big draw.
The Fall Festival, that covers the cost what we put in out for the
That's a huge.
moon bounce and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, home show, fall festival.
So that trifold marketing and display board, that's not what we're talking about, that, we're getting from Ralph Bunch, I think. It's something else, similar to that.
Similar to that, but for the county.
Okay.
Did we get somewhat of a feel, I think Ruby had mentioned to bring this to the chamber for their approval, would
So,
that be acceptable?
Well, I think that's always, I think you as part of your outreach.
Well, sure.
This,
The EMI going on.
yes, this trifold display board, can you describe it? Is it electronic or is it static?
It's a static display.
Okay.
You just fold it over and you
Then I-
carry it.
I think you ought to look at digital displays. I think, and the reason I say that, you get a lot more flexibility. The prices have come down dramatically on those. It's something to at least investigate. And it gives you a little bit more pop. And you can get them big enough now that you can make a difference and you could tailor it to whatever was going.
Portability.
Yeah, yeah. So take a look at that. It's you know, may not work, but at least we ought not just get stuck into this cardboard fold out or foam board float out.
So, one other thing I was thinking about as I was looking through the lists on here, because there are varying calibers of establishments that show up here, right? There are some who may want to be on the map, there's some who may not want to be on the map.
Yeah.
So there may be a way to do to cover the cost of something like this for those who,
I thought about that
the
too.
for-profit folks who make it.
There is, in many localities have a pay-to-play, so you pay to play. It will take a full-time person to reach out on a regular, but to try to, you're right, but we have to call every one of these businesses. A lot of them, we have their addresses, and some of them will have their phone numbers. Believe it or not, some of them we don't. So we could do a door-to-door campaign too, but
Or the
it's
alternative.
Some of the lodging places, for example, might not be the ones that folks are going to want to stop at and stay. They're more of a long-term occupancy kind of thing.
So that's a good that poses another question. Is that the direction we want to go? We want to do a pay-to-play or?
You at least want it coordinated.
Well, so remember you got the other side. I think Caroline wasted a lot of space. I think you could have people buy their spot.
Yeah. Which is what you typically see on a lot of these.
Well, I think when you see some destination maps, a lot of times you'll see the hotels listed at the top and it goes down.
Yeah.
It almost forms the frame. I think the concern, I know Linwood and I have talked about is the time getting out to all these vendors, trying to get them to buy
I mean,
in.
part of this fund can be to get a part-time intern to go do that.
It would be.
Either that or hire a company to
I mean, there's other options,
businesses.
but,
Well,
We were thinking about also.
should only be at. We need to also be careful what we advertise, right? So, so there's some things on this list that we can encourage folks to go to that might not be the best representation of King George County. I can tell you what they are.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Do that
That's a
privately,
slippery
please.
slope to
I will.
going down that road.
I think from the staff side, we wanted to make sure we're inclusive of everybody,
Yeah.
but when you start leaving off people,
Yeah.
then it starts becoming,
Well,
why did you leave us off?
I think you have to.
So what are we trying to do? We're trying to have a solid portrayal of the county with this, right? So, you know, all-inclusive is a great thing. So that's where if you turn it back into, hey, you for a fee, you get your name on the list, then that gives you an out on that. It allows you.
And you'll quickly find out how much interest there is in this.
And if I could, so you're not looking to print a new one every year, correct?
No, that's correct.
So you could hypothetically do something like the Northern Neck Tourism Council does, because you don't need this done tomorrow, okay? So we have a 6-month window where we basically let everyone know for $125, you can be in the next printing, okay? And then that's good until we print the next brochure. So, all right, they got 6 months to respond. And if you miss that 6-month window, too bad. You're in for $125, as many people as want to be in, and you're good until the next printing.
And our nonprofits can have a way to get in, you know, things like Caledon as a state park, or, I mean, there's a lot of things on here that that are not for-profit businesses that certainly you'd want to list.
And like you say, there's a company that does it, because I know in Caroline with the sheriff's calendar, there's a company that calls you once a year and wants your input on an ad, and they'll come around and pick up the donation. The company does that, and they do it on behalf of the sheriff's department, and then they bring you this big calendar each year with your ad on it. So same type of thing we could do with something like that, I'm sure.
So anyways, something to consider is to look at making it, I like the idea of pay for play, I do. I think and I think at that point in time, you find out who's interested. And I like the idea of going out and saying to